Running Sentences presents Poli Episode 9, Treading Onward. The Art Council office finds itself plunged into chaos as they try to figure out what they can do next. Copyright 2020, Running Sentences Podcast. This is a work of fiction from the author's imagination. Any names, characters, businesses, events, and incidents are products of said imagination. Any resemblance to actual people, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. Since the phone call from Dr. Vincent saying that the movie studio deal would not be moving forward, Alice had called back Hook, who had headed home for the night, and she, along with Lawrence, Susanna, and Hook, who had just arrived back, sat around the meeting room with the setting sun in the window. None of them looked pleased to be there as they all sort of had that million-yard stare. Alice was looking at the meeting room table, trying to find the words as Hook had come in. "What happened now that you had to call me back from going home and dealing with the state legislature? I'm sorry to call you back, Mr. Hook. It's just that I know you have much to deal with in the state, and I wouldn't call you back unless it was important, and this is a challenge to our entire office. The studio deal has completely collapsed with no recovery." Yes, exactly my point. We do have other options to cover our promises, but they aren't as promising and as money-driven as one would hope to cover. Lawrence snapped out of his stupor and looked over to Alice. So what are you gonna have me and Susanna doing? Well, Lawrence, I need you to write up a press release and release it to the press about the studio. As for the commissioner and his current secretary, I need both of you to look into deals and decide which is best. Isn't that your job? I will be doing it as well, Susanna. Is there anything you wish to add, Commissioner, or shall we all leave for the night? The commissioner had taken on the million-mile stare that had abandoned Lawrence and Susanna just a minute ago, and then snapped to, "Well, if I can head home, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I don't know why you couldn't tell me this over the phone, but what's done is done. I'm heading home." He quietly turned and stumbled his way out of the meeting room. Susanna, however, was looking to Alice to see if there was anything else, and she shrugged as she got up from her seat. "We're done for the day, I guess. You two can go home and get some rest. Come back ready for tomorrow, whatever tomorrow brings." The three collected their things and headed out. Hook, during his drive home, couldn't get his mind off the flop deal. It preyed on his mind from the evening until the night, where in his living room he moved about trying to find a place where he could stand and think. But finding no place quite as comfortable, he would move to another spot and repeat the whole process. His wife Carol sat on the couch reading a novel, trying her best not to pay attention to the movement. This, however, failed, as it was all rather distracting sight. "What are you doing, dear?" "Oh, thinking. Yes, but what about?" "The Art Council office. It's about to fall into shambles. I'm letting the head of the department go. My old secretary wants his job back, and I can't hand it over just because he wants it back. And the studio deal with Dr. Vincent is no longer a thing." He wandered over to the couch and sat heavily down. "Is the studio deal that big of a deal?" "Well, it was sort of tied to getting the budget approved for the council. I need to find a way to cover that promise with other deals, all while making sure that it doesn't look like I'm favoring areas." "It sounds like you need a good sleep. You'll have it figured out in the morning, as per usual." She got up from the couch and then once up, grabbed a hold of her husband's wrist and pulled. Hook was soon standing in front of her, holding his wife's hand as they went off towards the bedroom. It was the next morning that Hook marched his way towards the Art Council office building entrance. There a group of reporters had gathered around looking for news and information. Upon seeing him, they moved their crowded selves over towards him. "If you're here to ask me about the studio deal, I will only say that the deal isn't going to happen." A flurry of reporters began asking questions, drowning each other's voices out until one managed to be loud enough. "Is there a reason the deal didn't happen, Commissioner?" The investors decided that this was the best course of action for them. Alice, who'd been coming up from the parking lot, noticed the group and rushed over towards Hook and grabbed his arm. She pulled him towards the entrance. "That is all we have to say. We will have a press release out later to clarify what we are saying now. Thank you." She pulled Hook into the entrance and through the doorway. The crowd of reporters dutifully follows to the door with more questions, but as they were all overlapping, none were actually heard, and it all came to a stop at the door. She continued to pull Hook across the lobby and into the elevator. The elevator soon started moving, sending them towards the Art Council office. "I don't know why you stopped me from talking to the press." "Because the studio investors might, in a remote chance, change their mind, even though that chance is so extremely slight. We don't say anything that might piss them off, and give them any reason to never consider us ever again. Trust me, I've seen it happen to a neighboring state art council. It wasn't pretty, and lots of people lost their jobs. Politics is no fun. By the way, yes, Duncan came to talk to me, and I'm considering my options. I won't know my answer for a few more days, and I will, of course, continue to work on this." The elevator dinged as it arrived on the art council floor. "This makes it sound like you're leaving, though." "I may be, and I, of course, meant I would continue to work hard after any such decision, even if I were to stay or leave." The two headed down the hallway, having fallen into silence as they headed towards their respective offices, the quiet only broken by their footsteps, and then... "I did think of something that would help us out, though. What if we create and hold a film festival along with setting up some funds to encourage arts in the area?" "Yes, both of those options would work, and we can pitch them as a package deal to drive business into the area." "That is a very good idea, Commissioner." "Ha, thank you. I thought you might like it." The two arrived at the end of the hallway, with Hook heading straight into his office, while Alice split off and headed towards hers. She pushed her way into her office and stopped as Duncan sat in the visitor's chair across from her desk. She arched her eyebrows and headed for her side of her desk. "You're looking for answers to your question, or are you withdrawing your offer?" "An answer. I'd like to be able to move forward and be able to work again. Do you have one?" "Not currently, no. I've been psyched up into dealing with a whirlwind situation with the Art Council as we struggle to make ends meet. I should have an answer soon. I do have to ask, could I potentially choose to go over? Might I be able to bring someone with me?" "From this department? Well, I don't mind much as long as they're helpful in work. I can only give you to the end of tomorrow to decide, though, so good day." With that, Duncan rose from the chair he'd been sitting in and walked out of the office. Alice had already taken to ignoring this and was busy looking over her morning inbox and getting her computer started. Across the Art Council in the PR office, Lawrence was pacing about the space, a piece of paper in his hand, reading the press release that he'd written for the morning. "The Art Council thanks you for your interest in business of the film studio deal. Unfortunately, the deal has been worked on is no longer in consideration. The investors potentially are looking elsewhere, and we will keep you informed on any changes that happen." He stopped walking as he finished what he was saying and rolled his eyes. "More like we don't have anything to say, so here's a nothing statement that you won't report on." A knock on the door caused him to pause as he headed over and opened it. And in quietly came Hook, looking around to see if there was anything suspicious going on. "Good, you're here. I wanted to talk to you about the secretary job you wanted, but I can't hand back to you." "Then why are you here, Commissioner?" "Alice Jacob might be leaving the office for another job. If we can push her out, well, I can rearrange things so that you could go back to the way things were, or maybe be pushed in line for her job, or something more important." "Not interested." "Why not?" "Your secretary's job is a simpler one, and I'm trying to get away from the drama and infighting that goes along behind the scenes at this office. It seems to center around Alice as she works her magic. I hate that aspect of being underhanded to get things done with this council." "I see. Well, then I don't know if I can help you since you won't help me." Lawrence could only offer a shrug and a shake of his head, and Hook took that as no and turned and headed back out the door. He headed back towards his office, passing by Susanna, who was busy with her work, and went into his office without bothering her. It was at this point that Alice came down the hallway from her office and looked to make sure that Hook had the door firmly shut and that he wouldn't hear anything. She glanced over at Susanna, who was busy organizing files into color-coordinated manila file folders. Susanna, what can I help you with, Miss Alice? Would you be interested in a new job? It would be working for Duncan, the boss of the building council. I feel like you would be a great fit. Are you trying to get rid of me? No, only Hook can do that. I've been offered a position by Duncan, and I am of course considering it. I felt that you might want to come along with me, as there are more interesting adventures happening up there instead of down here. If I decide to go, of course, or if he offers you a job separate from mine, you might want to take that up. I just wanted to sound you out on the idea, and if you would be interested in it, let me know. As she turned to head back towards her office, Hook came out of his. Is something wrong? No, I had a private conversation with Susanna, and I just wanted to see if there was anything going on from your side of things and that needed to be taken care of. I can easily tell you that there's not. Also, I'm heading out as I have much to do with the state senate for the next few days. If you'll excuse me. Hook then continued on his way out of the office while Alice retreated towards her office. Susanna continued on her filing as if nothing important happened, though a bit slower as she was considering this new offer. Alice had remained at her office for most of the morning into the early afternoon, where she sat at her desk busy reading up on a short summary of the potential festival for Baldur's district area. The paper was a mere paragraph long. Right, this is crap, but I should show some initiative with our funds going the right way now to beef it up with fancy nothing words. A sharp knock on her door interrupted her mangling of the paragraph with fancy words, and Lawrence came in holding his own piece of paper. He held it up for her to take and look over. She put down her own and took up his. The press release, about the failed deal. I figured you'd want to see it and give it a quick once-over before we sent it over. She quickly looked it over before handing it back with a nod. Yes, it looks fine now, Lawrence. Good. I should tell you that, Morgan Hook wants you out and is pushing for you to take some other job. Nothing new with him, is there? Just like old times of a few weeks ago. God, it was only a few weeks ago. Yes, it was. I should go. He doesn't know that you know, though. At least I think he doesn't know. Thank you, Lawrence. Keep up the good work. He then slipped back out of the office with the paper he'd given her, and she turned back to her own work of beefing up a paper project to bring the festival to life. Across town at the State Senate building, Hook was strolling the lobby floor, his mind busy with whether supporting a bill on the establishment of a statewide internet is worth his time. Baldur was busy crossing the lobby, coming the other way, and approaches and stops in front of him. Well, Mr. Hook, I want to hear your new plans for dealing with your half of the deal. Colonel Baldur, we are directing more artsy businesses your way. Don't worry about that. We have a new latest plan that is set to fund a drive of arts into the area, and we will create a film festival and some sort of other festivals. It won't be the studio, but we were aiming pretty high with that situation. This new one will drive money. Well, that's not great, but I suppose it does show that you're keeping your end of the deal. But this one better not fall through. As he said this, Baldur found something to glare off in the distance and then stormed off in that direction. Hook was surprised and turned to see what was happening, but spotted nothing, and then with a shrug headed off in the direction he was going, muttering to himself, to support the bill or not? Will people still vote for me if I support it, or should I offer an amendment to change the whole thing into useless? He continued off on his way towards the floor to talk to a friend. He'd managed to make his way to the doors that led to the state legislature floor, but didn't enter the chambers, as his friend Bertie was outside talking to another person. Hook shuffled himself off to the side to make sure he wasn't in the way of anyone going in, waved his hand to catch Bertie's attention, which he shortly did, and the state senator soon untangled himself from his conversation and headed over. "Oh, it's good to see ya. You know, I heard the strangest rumor the other day, and it involved the Art Council. Rumors and the Art Council. What a weird combination." "Oh, what was it?" I'm sure it was nothing, but the story I heard was that our party put you in the Art Council office just so that they could shut it down. They could easily do that without me, though." "True. I think there was something more to it than that, but I only heard snippets of the conversation. I didn't want to appear to be listening in on something I shouldn't be listening in on and get yelled at by the whip." "Great. I'm stuck with a rumor and conjecture about things and trying to make Boulder happy. Well, Hook, I could go and check with the person. In fact, why don't I do that? I'll find you by the end of the day at your state offices, and we'll sort this matter out, Hook. It won't be a big deal, I'm sure." To this, Hook could only merely shake his head yes, and because his head was spinning so much. Everything going on was just bouncing around and around and around. Bertie had already headed off towards the door leading to the state assembly floor, and after collecting himself for a minute and trying to get his head not to spin around and around, Hook headed after him to see if there was anything interesting going on to be voted for on that day. Back at the office building that the Art Council called home, Duncan Blast stood in his executive office of the building on the top floor. He was trying to measure out a distance between him and a piece of paper that had a dartboard on it. He was doing so by pacing it out with his feet. With 20 paces counted out, he turned back towards his target and raised his darts to prepare to throw them, with narrowed eyes honing in on the paper. Then he took a few rapid steps in, and then tossed the darts at the paper with 6 satisfying thuds following. "Damn! I missed most of the paper. Oh well, at least the law books behind them aren't much of use to anyone." The door opened and his secretary poked her head in. "Sir, there is a Miss Bruce to see you." "Bruce, like the governor. Is it his daughter? Has she come to see me? I know she stopped by the other day looking around, something about the Art Council, if I remember. Oh, well, I guess I shall see her." With that, Duncan abandoned his dartboard and dart, and walked away from his lined-up spot towards the door, waving his hands at his secretary to get her to move out of the way. She opened the door fully and then scooted out of the way as he came through. He emerged from his office into the lobby area and glanced over at the lone figure of Susanna. She was standing near a set of chairs, and she looked like she was looking around for something to look at, but the white room provided little else other than the elevator or the secretary's desk as a bastion from all of the blinding whiteness. "Ah, yes, it is the governor's daughter who wanted to see me. What can I do for you?" "I heard you had offered Alice Jacob a job, and she said that she wanted me to come with her, or I could see if there was a job you might offer me on my own." "Are you unhappy down at the Art Council?" "It's okay, fun but boring, but for the most part it's just work. I believe that the commissioner may be looking at replacing me with his old secretary after his old secretary asked for his job back." Hook, of course, said no, but he's a politician, so that probably means if he can work it out, then he'll consider it. "Well, yes, I can see that the problem that you have. Well, I'm okay if you want to come up with Alice should she decide that you're to come with her. As for just you by yourself, I'll have to give it some thought. Is that okay?" "That's more than I should probably ask for. Thank you, and I'll get out of your way." Susanna gave a sudden bow and backed away towards the elevator, hitting the call button and taking a few seconds for it to arrive with a ding. Duncan waved goodbye, though Susanna isn't paying any attention to him as he stepped on board and the elevator soon closed. "Is there anything you need from me, sir?" "Yes, my fine secretary. I'll need you to scrounge up the employment files for who actually works for me. I want to see if there is a potential fit for this young lady." "Yes, sir." And with that, he marched back into his office, humming something about darts. The afternoon treaded into the evening as Hook found himself back at his state legislature office. He'd just gotten in and was quietly trying to make his way through so not to bother anyone, and as he shut the door behind him. It had been a tiring day of not really listening to other people talk their heads off about important matters. It was not very conducive to staying awake. It had been long, and his dragging manner showed as he headed for his desk. This, however, was interrupted as Bertie came rushing in, looking for him. "Ah, there you are. I've been rushing to find out about what I could from those rumors. It's not good, by the way. Terrible, even." "You got it wrong, then?" "Oh, I heard it right, and it's just that I probably shouldn't tell you the what's what, but, since we're friends, I found that the rumor is the Art Council wants to be shut down as a waste of money, and that the state could do the job through the state legislature much better." "That's preposterous. It cannot be done through the state legislature. It's paperwork. The state hates paperwork, but it loves paperwork, and it hates it. Now, I don't know why it can't be done by them. And there's more to it than that you were to be blamed for its closure and gotten rid of." "What?" That's pretty much all there was to the rumor, though it was also said that had you actually accomplished the movie studio deal, the plan would have at least been put on hold for another year. Does anyone know that I know about this? I can't be certain, but I suspect that since I know that the party will probably figure that you know. Damn, and I've been a good party man, never straying from voting with them. Why are they throwing me out now? How have I gone wrong? Where have I gone wrong? Listen, I don't think you've gone wrong, but they've decided that this is the way things are going to be. I think they don't see you as much other than a useful tool to get rid of something that doesn't belong and they want rid of. And I repeat myself, damn them as well." All the tiredness had gone from Huck's body as he began moving about the office trying to find a place to use his energy. Bertie, however, held near the door, casting his glance towards the exit, which finally caught Hook's attention as it seemed Bertie was moving slightly, ever more so, towards the door. "Listen, Hook, you need to go because you don't want to be associated with a dead-term politician." "Yeah, then leave." Bertie slipped out of the door, carefully closing it as he went, and Hook went back to pacing, and even put his hands to his face with the hopes that this would help him think of something to get a way out of this. It took him a few more minutes to finally decide that there was nothing to be done here, and he headed home for the night. And when the next morning came about, Hook was back in the Art Council and wandered into Alice's office to find that she wasn't there. He froze for a second before turning and heading out. From there, he wandered down the hallway to Susanna's desk, only to find his secretary not present either. He waited for her to appear for a minute, but when she didn't, threw his hands up in the air and wrote a note on her desk, saying that he wanted to see her and Alice as soon as possible. He left that on her top of her computer keyboard and then went into his office. It would be the late morning before the door to his office opened and Alice, along with Susanna, both came in. Hook had been sitting at his desk for the better part of an hour or so, staring off into no man's land, thinking. Alice carefully approached with Susanna, neither of them wanting to interrupt the staring contest with the far wall. Yes, I already know you two are there. No need to sneak about. We have stuff to talk about." The two women take seats across from him. Hook, on the other hand, blinks as he tries to adjust himself and gets more comfortable in his chair. It was Susanna who crept a little bit forward in her chair and was the first to speak. "What did you want to talk about? Was it moving on to some other job? Was it us moving on to some other job?" "No, or if you do it, it must be after the budget passes." "Then what is it you wish, Commissioner?" "My party is trying to close down this council and move all of the work to the state legislature. They put me in this office to accomplish this goal. However, I was not made aware of this as they plan to blame me for the whole thing." "Alice, jumped up from her chair, then sat back down, then jumped up again. She was doing her best to control her trembling anger, but the glare that Hook was getting was more than enough to say that it wasn't in control. Susanna moved to grab and comfort Alice, but Alice shook free of her reaching grasp. "Before you go off on me, Alice, it is not my fault that any of this has happened. In fact, we could have stopped it had we done the movie deal, but it's all party policies and politics, and it wasn't my fault. And you've been nothing more than a yes person for your party." "Yes, that is true. I was, but in my defense, I didn't know that they were doing any of this. I realize that what I'm saying won't please you, but we need to figure out a way out of this." "Won't that kill your political career, Commissioner?" "What career? My only hope is either independence from my own party or the other party. Few people are willing to elect someone independent from the major parties without a major party backing them, and my opposition probably feels it's easier just to wait for the next election for someone more aligned with their views." "What do you propose, then, Commissioner?" "Something, Alice. Anything. The only thing I had to go on for stopping them was the studio deal. That almost torpedoed their plan. So my command for the next few days is come up with something to prove that we're needed. Go forth and please do that." Alice didn't look like she bought what Hook was saying for the moment and remained planted in her spot, still trembling slightly, as she tried to decide what to do. Susanna, however, had risen now and was gently trying to move Alice towards the door and eventually managed to get them out. Just outside of Hook's office, Susanna managed to get Alice over to her nearby chair, and Alice looked rather dazed and sort of spaced out. "Are you all right?" No, I don't know." "What are we going to do, Alice? We help the Commissioner, or do we go work for Duncan?" Alice snapped out of her daze and glanced at Susanna and then back at the door to Hook's office. She slowly got up from the chair, still trembling from frustration and anger. It was still there, but the tremble was a little less obvious. "Well, I have plenty of people to start talking to, and I'm going to start with Duncan. Susanna, perhaps you could get your dad to see what's going on. We need to get moving, otherwise abandoning ship might be our only option." "Oh yeah, I can get a hold of my dad, the governor, and see what he says." Good. I'll head upstairs then, and don't leave for the day before seeing me to see what's going on." With that, Alice hurried off down the hallway towards the elevators, and Susanna sat down at her desk, reaching out for her office phone. Her hand paused for a second before she picked it up and dialed her father's phone number. It rang for a few times before it picked up. "Hi, Dad, it's Susie." "Oh, I wondered why my phone was saying that the number for the Art Council was on it. How are you, darling? Getting along there?" "No, well, yes, but no. Something's come up. There's been rumors pacing about the place that are threatening my job. I don't like it, and I wondered if you'd heard about them." "Well, I wouldn't put much stock in rumors. Those sorts of things tend to only grow bigger and more silly with each time they get told. The thing is, the rumors say that your party and you are shutting down the Art Council. No, you wouldn't fire your own daughter, but I just want to make sure that it isn't the case." "Oh, well, I wouldn't personally shut it down. No, not me. Other parts of the state government might be trying such silly things, but I'll see if I can find out what's going on, darling." "Thank you, Daddy. We'll see you later tonight for dinner." "Bye, darling." The phone line fell dead, allowing Susanna to hang up the phone feeling somewhat accomplished. She turned to her computer to start doing the rest of her work for the day, filing away papers. Alice, on the other hand, had gotten up to Duncan's office and paced about the area where Duncan's secretary sat. The man nor his secretary were not present in the area. She tried his door several times and found it locked each time. A glance at her cell phone reading 1 p.m. told her that she'd been spending more time than she should be sticking around here, and it wasn't the most conducive of things to do with her time. She hurried over to the secretary's desk and wrote a note saying she called and would call again later in the day. With that done, she headed over to the elevators to head for the lobby. She arrived in short order to the building lobby and looked about for her contact, Obadiah Smith, an elderly man of many years of civil service. It didn't take long to spot him arguing with security when she came out of the elevator.
"What do you mean I can't see the person who asked me to come here?"
Not waiting a further second, she headed over to Obadiah and waved to the security guard. "He's my guest. If you could just make out a visitor's pass, please."
"I used to work here, and now you won't even let me in."
"Times have changed, Obadiah. Times have changed." The security guard eagerly made out a visitor's pass so that he could get rid of Obadiah and had the man sign it and then allowed them to press on. Alice directed him towards the elevators. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. I know I called you rather abruptly and out of the blue."
"Yes, well, I owed you a favor, so figured it might get me free of that. What's the issue, Miss Jacob?"
"Oh, one thing has actually turned into two things as the art world keeps changing."
"Is it more of that experimental art that makes no sense, but the artists cry if you don't take them seriously?"
"No. One thing does with how we're directing our funds, and the other is with keeping the Art Council open for business."
Funds, closure, those are easy things to walk all over. I dealt with them many a time. You were right to call me in, though. I still have my connections, and I'll wrangle us out of this in no time."
They'd arrived at the elevator and stepped onto it, and soon they were whisked upward. This soon led them up to the Art Council office, which they arrived in silence. As they headed out down the hallway, Obadiah looked around the place with a bit of a sneer. They had started heading down the hallway before Obadiah finally said another thing.
"Well, this place has the scent of artists all over it. That's not a good thing. But let's not waste time on that. Funding, what's the issue?"
"We've promised to set a fund and push arts in a district in return for the budget getting passed through the legislature. I've been trying to figure out how to get that done with anyone noticing."
"Oh, just announce it as a directed fund and that you'll be moving it around from district to district every year or so."
"I should have thought of that."
Yes. And the matter of the closure?"
I think my office would be a better place to talk about that matter." Obadiah shrugged at this and shuffled after her as they walked down the hallway, past Susanna's desk, which is empty. They finally took the turn into Alice's office, where they arrived a minute later. She guided Obadiah to a chair and then took up her usual station behind her desk, and she sat down rather heavily, though, and ran her hand through her hair as she gave a quick account of what was going on. Obadiah, for his part, sat back and listened, nodding along the way, but not saying anything right away. When she came to the end, he stared off into the distance just beyond her head, looking for something. A knock on the door interrupted as Susanna stepped in. I talked to who you asked me to talk to, and they said they'll look into the matter, if that's a help at all." Alice waved her hand to dismiss the worries of Susanna. "It's fine. This is Obadiah, and he's an old hat of civil service. He's still willing to go to battle for us, because what else is there to do once one has retired?"
"There is plenty to do once retired. The problem is none of it is interesting. A political fight, however, is fun."
"Well, my father said it wasn't his doing, and that it was all the state legislature. But he would look into it and see what he could do. I don't expect much from him, but..."
"You're the governor's daughter, correct?" Alice mentioned something along those lines. "And it isn't that we don't want to trust him, but we're not going to trust him until we can get into the bottom of this."
Yes, I am his daughter, and I will do a little of the trusting if you don't mind."
Good. We need perspective other than our own to get things done. Now, I think our first step will be to shut down."
"Shut down, Obadiah?" Susanna came further into the room as Hook came crowding his way into the small office. He looked around.
"What's going on? What's shutting down?" "The Art Council needs to shut down and hand over full control to the legislature." No, I can't let that happen. Who is this man, anyway?" "I'm Obadiah Smith, former head of the Council of Councils until I retired. My job is to save your department."
"By shutting it down, Obadiah? That does seem counterproductive." Susanna shifted further in to get some more room, but she spoke up. That does seem rather counterproductive to do that."
I'll be blamed for it and I'll never get a job again. At least in politics, not even, or maybe not even speaking engagements. Oh, calm down. We need to prove to the legislature that they don't want to take on this task as they are too busy. In order to do that, though, we need to act like we are shutting down while being alive and well. We need to push them paperwork.
Appearances can be deceiving?
Precisely as the governor's daughter says, so shut it all down.
And then what, Obadiah?
I don't know. That will be up to you. I'm merely an idea person.
With that, Obadiah stood up and purposefully walked out of the room. Hook and Susanna both moved over to the chairs to sit down as he left. The look of daze returned to the group as Lawrence came in with a piece of paper.
Oh, what's going on, guys? Who's that who just left?
Alice offered a quick rundown, and Lawrence, too, took on a rather bleak look and just stood there, joining them in their lost thoughts.
What if...
Yeah. No, I had a thought about informing the media that we'll be closing thanks to the legislature, but they don't care about us, do they?
No, they don't.
You're right, Commissioner, no, they don't. But the artists do, and when enough people make noise, then the press will at least pretend to care for a few seconds. We will have to use that to launch our offensive against the state legislature while pretending to close, I suppose. Will that work, though, Alice? You know as well as I do that once a politician says something, they usually don't like going back on it. They fear being thrown back in their faces. We don't really stand a chance, but we can at least try. But we have to tell everyone and anyone who will listen anyway, okay? Everyone knows what we have to do? And they all shook their heads yes and were out of the door in her office in a flash. Alice, however, remained seated as it was her office, and running out seemed like a silly thing to do. She did stand up for a second before sitting back down and turning on her computer to get to work once again. End of episode 9 of Poli Arts. Thank you for listening.